Um, for the past several years, we already knew that Trump's first term as squatter was a nightmare. And if you didn't think it was, you better fucking wake up, because if he wins again, it's gonna get a whole lot fucking worse than what it already was. Now, Donald Trump is the type of fascist terminator. He would not stop and he would not get tired, but because he is relentless in his pursuit of power, he would do anything to try to keep that power. And he's trying to do that right now. And he's not alone, basically, because, for one, many of Trump's sycophantic inbreds are willing to engage in acts of terrorism and other violence at his command. Now the other people in Trump's orbit are using him as a weapon to advance their own political agenda of creating a new American apartheid Christian fascist plutocracy. And they have no use for Trump personally, but some of them have acknowledged in private that he is very dangerous. But they have convinced themselves that Trump can be deployed to do their bidding, and to this point they have been proven fucking correct. Now ultimately, Donald Trump's first regime was but a preview of the American nightmare he and the Republican fascists are advancing on. If Trump returns to power in 2024 or beyond, matters will be a whole lot worse. Donald Trump and his coup confederates need to be prosecuted, tried, convicted, and given the maximum penalty and to be serving in jail allowed under the law as a necessary first step in saving American democracy and the country's future from the rising fascist tide. Now, the House January 6 committee hearings, they have confirmed that Trump's coup attempt was much closer to succeeding than among many of the mainstream media, the mainstream American news media, and the country's political class wanted to believe. As part of this plot, Trump and his Confederates embedded their agents in critical positions throughout the United States government at the highest levels, including the national security state. Now, their role in the coup attempt and the subsequent attempts to hide and otherwise conceal and destroy evidence is still being revealed. Now these idiots that remain loyal to Donald Trump and the Republican fascist movement, which I don't see how, because Trump isn't loyal to anyone. Trump will throw your fucking ass under the bus if you turn on him, and presumably they will be used again in any future coup attempt or any other attempt to nullify American democracy and the rule of law. Now, Trump's coup plot was disrupted by members of his administration, as well as career civil servants who were more loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law than to his fascist personality cult. If and when Trump takes power again, he will remove such obstacles to his authority so that it would fit his authoritarian rule. Now, in a critically important recent article, Jonathan Swan had explained how such a plan could be reenacted. Now, former squatter Donald Trump's allies are preparing to radically reshape the federal government if he is reelected, purging potentially thousands of civil servants and filling the career posts with loyal sycophants to him and his American first ideology, even though Trump never put America first. Now, people involved in the discussion tell Axios the impact could go well beyond typical conservative targets, such as the Environmental Protection Agency and the Internal Revenue Service. Now, Trump sycophants are working on plans that would potentially strip lawyers at the Justice Department, including the FBI, and reaching into national security intelligence, and the State Department and the Pentagon, sources close to the former squatter says. Now, Swan goes on to continue. They intend to stack thousands of mid-level staff jobs. Well-funded groups are already developing lists of candidates selected often for their animus against the system. In line with Trump's long-running obsession with draining the swamp, which he never did, Trump basically didn't drain the swamp. He stacked his cabinet with a whole bunch of Goldman Sachs people and everybody else. This includes building extensive databases of people vetted as being committed to Trump and his sycophantic agenda. The preparations are far more advanced and ambitious than previously reported, but what is happening now is an immersion of the slapdash and virtually non-existent infrastructure surrounding Trump ahead of his 2017 squatterable candidacy. These groups are operating on multiple fronts, shaping policies that don't benefit anybody, identifying top lieutenants, curating an alternative labor force of unprecedented scale, and preparing for legal challenges and defenses that might go before Trump-friendly judges all the way to 6-3 Supreme Court. Donald Trump's former White House advisor, the white supremacist Stephen Miller, would play a key role in deciding who was qualified for the new regime per its loyalty and other ideological cult tests. Identifying and assembling a list of lawyers who would be ready to fill the key general counsel jobs across government in the second term Trump administration, Swan writes. Now Miller has his eye out for general counsels who aggressively implement Trump's orders and skeptically interrogate any career government attorney who tells them that their plans are unlawful or cannot be done. In a new article at the New York Times, leading sociologist and political scientist Theda Skocpol explained to Thomas Edsall how Trump in a second term would bring in like-minded, loyal, and lawless authoritarians from the get-go, especially to run justice, homeland security, and defense. Now, Skocpol also explained that America's political and other governing institutions would not survive under another Trump term, because they wouldn't, especially because of parallel reinforcing developments in a majority of states and in the federal courts. Discouragement and outright repression and popular threats of violence would push most centrists and liberals into full retreat. Now, this minority rule, Skocpol notes, would punish the nation into a major new decades-long era of U.S. politics. We may already have done so, given the 63 SCOTUS majority devoted to eviscerating federal government power from any Democratic Party agenda priorities, and none of this should be a fucking surprise. Now, Trump has a deep attraction to violence. As such, he admires authoritarian leaders such as Putin, Orban, Erdogan, Duterte, Mohammed bin Salman, Bolsonaro, and Hitler, and how they de facto have the power to kill at will and engage in acts of wanton cruelty and violence against their enemies and others in the name of law and order, safety, security, and unity. In a Klan speech last week at the America Last Agenda Summit in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump detailed the reign of terror he would unleash if he were to be reelected to be squatter. One of Trump's main priorities will be to further dehumanize and brutalize the homeless, drug addicts, and other vulnerable and marginalized individuals and communities. Trump is also biting at the bit to use the National Guard as his personal shock troops to impose his and the Republican fascist will on the Democrat-led majority black and brown cities to stop crime. Now, during his Klan speech, Trump said this: "We have blood, death, and suffering on a scale one unthinkable because of the Democratic Party's efforts to destroy and dismantle law enforcement, which they're not really doing. The Democrats have not done anything to destroy or dismantle any law enforcement." So basically, he changed this around because it's something he did, and he's kind of blaming the Democrats for it. Basically, he says, "Oh, it has to stop, and it has to stop now. If we don't have safety, we didn't have any safety when you were squatting in the White House, you fucking fat ass. And we don't have a country. Oh yeah, we don't have a country right now because you destroyed it, and Biden's trying to fix it." And Trump, you never put America first. I don't know why you keep saying that, because you put it last. So Donald Trump, like other fascist and authoritarian leaders have done in the past and present, they want the homeless and other undesirables to disappear. Trump's Klan speech last week and his threats of law and order, which he doesn't abide by anyway, because when he was squatting in the White House, he was committing every crime that there was. Basically, his lies about being law and order are a prime example of how fascists and other authoritarians expand their power and control, and they criminalize, dissent, and intimidate and otherwise brutalize any individuals or groups who dare to oppose them in any way. Now, writing for some company called Defense One, Kevin Barron offers this warning about Trump's plans and the danger that they pose to American democracy and the basic principle that the country's military is not supposed to involve itself they're not supposed to insert itself into any domestic politics. Now, Donald Trump just said he wants to build concentration camps in America, which is what Hitler did to basically exterminate the Jews and everything, and assume direct control. And he wants to assume direct control over the National Guard in a way that sounds a lot more like Nazi Germany. So on Tuesday, in his Klan speech meant for the ears of the Republican primary voters, Trump said that the next American person, like the next American president, which should not be him, should send the National Guard to Chicago. That would require at minimum invoking an insurrection act, and if you participate in an insurrection act, you're not allowed to be squatter again, which is supposed to be reserved for a natural disaster or civil violence to such an extent that the constituted authorities of the states or possession are incapable of maintaining public order. But it also would ignore the Illinois governor of the 1878 Posse, the Posse Comitatus Act. Not sure if I'm saying that right. And the advice of top National Guard generals who strongly resist federalization But we've been through this fucking debate before, and that's how extreme partisan politics could change the U.S. military forever. If Americans want, and it's not just control of the House that's on the ballot, it's control of the U.S. military. The law is not neutral, blind, or fair. And the authoritarian regime that Donald Trump and his Republican fascist allies and movement want to impose on the American people. The law is instead an extension of the great leaders, the ruling parties, and the other elites of the will, whims, and desires. For such rulers, the law is nothing but a means for exerting power and control to advance their narrow personal and political interests by snuffing out human freedom. It's important to understand this: that Donald Trump and the Republican fascists and the larger white right's plans for a new America do not exist in isolation. They are part of a much larger global project that takes inspiration from Vladimir Putin's goal to make Russia into a type of white Christian empire, as well as Hungarian leader Viktor Orban's fake right-wing populism and white supremacist nationalist agenda. Now, Orban is a particularly alluring role model and guide for the American neo-fascists. In a speech two weekends ago, Orban's boldly and without qualification or hesitance channeled Adolf Hitler, saying that we Hungarians are not a mixed race and we do not want to become a mixed race. Now, The Guardian offered this additional context on Saturday. He made frequent nods to the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, which claims that there is a plot to dilute the white populations of the U.S., and which there isn't, and European countries through migration, like the immigration, basically. He said it was an ideological trick of the internationalist left to say that the European population is already mixed race. I don't see how that is, but he named demographics, migration, and other gender as the main battlefields of the future on the same day that thousands of people rallied in Budapest for the city's annual Pride March. Now, as part of his campaign against diversity and multiculturalism, Orban's government and followers have targeted the LGBTQ community, feminists, immigrants, migrants, Muslims, Democrats, and others deemed to be human pollution, and the type of ethnically pure and strong white Christian society he is trying to create in Hungary and other parts of Europe. Now, the leading right-wing opinion leaders, such as Foe, which is not even real news anyway, so I don't believe anything that Foe says. But the racist piece of shit Tucker Carlson has been mainstreaming Orban's racial authoritarianism and outright fascist talking points about a white civilization being under siege, and imperiled or somehow at risk of being replaced in the public across the right-wing hate media propaganda echo chamber. Now, the Republican Party, which is pathetic, and other leading members of the American right wing have not properly denounced or renounced or condemned any of Orban's hateful and incendiary comments. Instead, Orban is a featured speaker this week in Dallas. Now, Donald Trump and the other Republican fascists are transparent, and they're direct with their plans to end America's pluralistic, multiracial democracy. As I have repeatedly stated, the Republican fascists and larger white right tell you what they are going to do and when they are going to do it. It is foolhardily and dangerous to ascribe some other meaning to their threats and plans, or otherwise attempt to impose some more kinder and gentler explanation for their cruelty. Now, unfortunately, too many Democrats, progressives, and so-called pro-democracy Americans continue out of desperation and unending bet to make that mistake. Now, in a recent post, journalist David Atkins echoes this warning. When Republicans say that they will do terrible things, they mean it. It's not just politics for them. If you give them power, they would do terrible things. You don't have the luxury of sending a message or making grumpy votes about gas prices that the presidents don't control. Now, Donald Trump's ex-wife, Ivana, had died back last month on July 14th, and they were married for 14 years and maintained a close relationship even after they divorced. Now, Donald Trump buried her on July 20th at his property golf course in New Jersey. Now, Ivana Trump's grave is not simple or modest. It is basically unmarked, and it looks like the type of grave that one would find at a potter's field or some equivalent space where the indignant are interred. In many ways, Ivana Trump's grave is a literal metaphor for Donald Trump and his lack of care and concern for other human beings. Some experts have speculated that Donald Trump likely buried his ex-wife at his golf course as a way of receiving a tax break for his property, because then it could be deemed a cemetery under state law. Donald Trump would treat his ex-wife and mother of his 3 children with such gross disregard. Imagine what he would do to the American people again if he were to return to the White House, fueled even more by vengeance and evil, and possessing even more power that he doesn't need. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. If you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way. And thanks for listening.